What if Stay Tuned for Danger had a different culprit? There's a scene at the end where Nancy has to accuse the culprit and say what their motive is. Wouldn't it be cool if whoever you picked actually was the culprit? And add a little challenge. Let's say if you pick the wrong motive for a suspect, then the game says you're wrong and the culprit's someone else. Let's start with Lillian. When Nancy accuses Lillian, she says Lillian's office has castor oil and the chocolate phone number. That proves she's guilty. The idea is that Lillian's responsible for the poisoned chocolates even in the normal storyline. She saw somebody was harassing Rick and she decided to join in. I checked. Castor oil is not poisonous in small amounts. Sometimes it's used as a laxative. Lillian does seem like the type of person who would put laxatives in her ex-boyfriend's food. Revenge is her motive. She's mad that Rick dated her as an excuse to meet people in the movie industry. Especially since she's trying to break into the movie industry. And maybe she's directed so many soap opera stories about angry girlfriends, it's warped the way she thinks. If Lillian is the culprit, she purposely lured Nancy to the studio at the end of the game in order to kill her. She only gave Nancy a chance to accuse her in order to see what evidence Nancy had. The culprit capture would have to change. In the original, Nancy has to open the exit door before the culprit comes downstairs, but Lillian is already standing downstairs in this case, so the culprit capture would be more like trying to dodge Lillian. It's a big studio, there's plenty of room to dodge. This could be a maze-like puzzle where you loop around the entire set, then escape through the hidden trapdoor lift. In real life, Nancy could probably escape from the culprit by climbing on the catwalk, and when the culprit tries to climb up after her, she could drop something heavy on their head to stop them. It would be poetic justice to defeat Lillian with a videotape. What if Rick was the culprit? When Nancy accuses Rick, she indicates the first few B.T. Kaiser letters were all fakes that he wrote to himself for publicity. That's why he didn't take them seriously. If Rick started the culprit work, why can't we say he finished it? If Rick is the culprit, that would explain how he survived the murder attempts. He knew exactly when the Klieg light would be falling, so he could get out of the way in time. Presumably, there's some sort of clause in his contract that says he's released if they fail to provide a safe work environment. So by pretending to attack himself, Rick gets out of his contract and he gets a ton of publicity. Not to mention he throws suspicion off himself by pretending to be the victim. Rick thinks things have gone on long enough. He's tried all sorts of attacks and WWB still won't let him out of his contract. He's finally decided that somebody has to die before the situation will be taken seriously. I like the original ending to the game just fine. It works to have the culprit talk to Nancy from the control booth for a while, then she has a timed puzzle in order to escape. That puzzle setup works no matter who the culprit is. But it would be boring if I said all 6 suspects should have the same ending. Let's do something different with each one. Rick purposely lured Lillian to the studio in order to kill her. He torments her with a stage directions puzzle. This matches the one board in the studio with stage notes. If you move in the correct direction, you live. If you move in the wrong direction, a Klieg light falls on you. Rick wasn't planning on Nancy being there, though. She correctly solves the puzzle and survives. Rick promises to date her if she'll let him go, but she refuses. What if Maddie was the culprit? When Nancy accuses Maddie, she says Maddie's sick and tired of sharing the spotlight with Rick. She wants to be the main character of the soap opera. Maddie's mom probably came up with that plan to make Maddie the star. Based on the small scene we see, Maddie is definitely better at acting than Rick is. She'd probably do better without him dragging her down. Still, it's kind of hard to argue that Rick is stealing all of Maddie's attention. She's clearly famous in her own right. She has 3 Emmys in her house. When Nancy accuses Maddie, she says that Maddie worked with an old boyfriend named Owen Spader. Does that mean Owen Spader is a real person if Maddie is the culprit? Because I thought Owen was a fake identity that Dwayne made up, so he could sneak around the set undetected. This is so confusing, was he doing this Owen Spader fake personality for years and years and years before the soap opera stuff started? I don't know, I'm confusing myself. Anyway, assuming Owen's real, why would Owen agree to help Maddie kill Rick? Does Owen not like Rick? We don't know anything about Owen, besides for the fact that he walks strangely. Maybe she's using Owen as a fall guy. If Owen gets caught, she'll deny knowing who he is, he gets all the blame, and she gets away with the crime. If Maddie's guilty, it was a good idea for her to try to kill Rick when she was filming a scene with him. That makes her look innocent. She was very close to being hurt. That has to be the same reason why Maddie hired Nancy to investigate. She wants to throw suspicion off of herself. But what about the bomb in Rick's dressing room? Again, Maddie looks innocent because she came close to being hurt in the explosion. There's more, though. The bomb was so powerful, it probably destroyed the wall between her dressing room and Rick's. That means Maddie now has a double-sized dressing room. Finally, there's enough space to store all of her makeup. Since Maddie has a partner in crime, this can play into the culprit capture. Let's say Lillian actually helps in this scenario instead of hiding in the corner. It's Owen versus Lillian and Maddie versus Nancy. You have to go back and forth between the two groups in solving a giant moving block puzzle. Lillian has an even number, Nancy has an odd number, and you put them together to get a larger odd number, which is the key to solving the puzzle, but totally sounds like something the series would do. What if Millie was the culprit? I never suspected her of being guilty because she's too much of a joke character. Even though she's the prop master, she seems fairly unconnected to the soap opera. She never appears on the set, and the other characters mostly don't talk about her. I sometimes forget she's even in this game. The most important thing she does is have her computer log on information stolen by Nancy. When Nancy accuses Millie, she says Millie has an insane desire for control of the studio. I have no idea where Nancy gets that from. Millie doesn't appear to be a control freak, nor does it seem like the other characters are following her orders. I thought it was the opposite. I get the sense the studio heads put her in the prop room because they want to get her out of the way where she can't do any damage. They think if she was in charge of something important, then the company would go bankrupt in a year. If Millie is the culprit, I think it's more that she's obsessed with the soap opera. She hates Rick's character and wants him gone, but the writers won't go along with it. As a compromise, they came up with Rory's twin brother Yuri, so Rick could play a different character, but that plan backfired, because now he's playing two characters, so Millie hates him twice as much. She thinks killing him in real life is the only way to get her least favorite character off of the show. If Millie's the culprit, there would probably be another scene with her in the game. Maybe Maddie could ask Nancy to get a specific prop, or there's a puzzle where Nancy has to match props to specific riddles. There would be more emphasis on the threatening notes to Rick, because the culprit used Millie's typewriter to write some of the notes. And maybe one of the attacks on Rick could involve a prop, like someone left a dangerous item inside a prop for Rick. Nancy doesn't look into where the tape recorder bomb came from. Maybe it's from the prop room. If Millie is the culprit, then I definitely want a prop-themed culprit capture. The random prop item that Nancy keeps is a doorknob. Let's say she has to use the doorknob to escape from the room. Oh no, Millie locked the metal sliding doors. I bet a doorknob will open them again. And since this is already silly, Millie can go on a long rant about Rick and the soap opera. She's so distracted she doesn't notice Nancy and Lillian trying to escape. Bill Pappas can't be the culprit because he never appears in person, but you know what? Dwayne appears in shadow for most of the culprit confrontation. They could have done the same thing with Pappas. He's a shadowy person that we never see clearly, and players are forever left to guess what he really looks like. Pappas' motive is clear. He spells it out at the start of the game. He would rather kill Rick than see Rick break their contract. I can believe Pappas as a studio control freak far more than Millie as the control freak. When Nancy accuses Pappas, she says he couldn't bear to be overshadowed by Rick's popularity and demands. I don't know where she gets that from. Rick has not been making unreasonable demands, and there's no sense that he's competing with Pappas for popularity. If Pappas was the culprit, the game would probably flesh out these ideas. Also, Pappas would probably be more sinister during his phone call to Nancy, And almost certainly Nancy would be able to snoop in his office at night. It's weird she can't open his door. It looks just like all the other doors she can open. I think I'm running out of ideas for culprit confrontations, and I don't want Nancy to talk him to death like in Midnight in Salem. So let's have a variation on the original game's final puzzle. Instead of having to press 8 buttons in the right order, the puzzle is to make 8 matches, and if you're not fast enough, Nancy's electrocuted. The game over scene has to be something like that, since we're purposely not showing what the culprit looks like. The culprit has to defeat Nancy from a distance somehow. The final character of the game is Ralph the security guard. He would never be the culprit. He wouldn't. There is no reason to pretend he could be guilty of attempted murder.